Howdy, y'all. Welcome to part 3 of my What is PragerU series. If you haven't seen the first two videos, they're linked in the description, but you don't need to have seen them to enjoy this one. So we've seen that there's plenty of ways for PragerU to get their content in front of kids. They can advertise it to them directly on YouTube, they can have other kids share it to them via PragerForce, but if you want to put right-wing propaganda in front of a kid, then the most effective route is to bring it to them through the people that they aren't allowed to ignore, their parents and their teachers. And that's where PrEP comes in. PrEP, short for PragerU Resources for Educators and Parents, is PragerU's outreach organization for teachers and parents. Essentially, it gives them resources that they can use to indoctrinate their kids. When we go to the page for PrEP on the PragerU website, we're greeted with a depiction of Dennis Prager as a small child holding the US flag. Now frankly, that seems like some Freudian shit that I do not want to unpack here. So let's just watch the Why You Should Join PrEP video.
We have an issue in this country, in most private schools and pretty much all public schools, where kids are receiving information, education, indoctrination that run counter to their parents' values.
I woke up big time in terms of learning what my kids were being educated about in schools. I woke up about what narratives are being pushed.
A lot of parents have not recognized that in the past, only until their kids grew up and had values that ran counter to them.
Okay, so PrEP, much like PragerU in general, exists as a reactionary pushback to kids learning stuff that conservatives don't like. While the way kids are educated hasn't changed much throughout US history, the curriculum has shifted over the years. Compared to several decades ago, schools teach a lot more about climate change, there's less blatant Christianity in schools, and probably the one upsetting PragerU the most, they take a more critical look at US history, particularly while examining the history of racism. The ethos of conservatism is opposition to change, so naturally they're upset over this objectively good educational trend. But also, the trend isn't even nearly as extreme as they like to claim. For all the conservative whining on critical race theory infiltrating the classroom, the US education system frankly does a really bad job on racism. It's treated like it disappeared in 1965 with Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech. And only 8% of high schoolers can even correctly identify slavery as the main cause of the Civil War. That's a fact so basic, even PragerU got it right. It's kind of jarring watching so many people get so violently upset by a positive shift in public education, and to then realize that the positive shift isn't even really happening that much in the first place. But you know, if the right didn't whine about nothing, they'd have nothing to keep their voting bloc focused. Also, I very much enjoy that the stock footage chosen for values that run counter to the conservative parents is a group of young people with signs that say, "Love, not hate." Just really saying the quiet part out loud.
I'm very thankful that Prager University has created PrEP. I think it is a fantastic support hub for parents like me who are wondering, how are we going to raise our kids against this mainstream media groupthink?
You know, you could make a great drinking game out of taking a shot whenever a conservative says one of those buzzwords that they have to make them angry. Mainstream media, woke, gender ideology. The only problem is that you'd be dead of alcohol poisoning within minutes. But yeah, PrEP's goal is to give parents and or teachers the resources to turn their kids into little right-wing stooges. The stuff they offer on their page is access to PrEP's private discussion forum, where you can connect with like-minded parents, guardians, grandparents, and educators, which, you guessed it, is code for access to a Facebook group. Breaking updates and early access to PragerU Kids content. Invitations to exclusive virtual events with other PrEP members. Originally, I had planned to join PrEP so that I could get access to the materials and show them to y'all, but unfortunately, joining costs $25, and while I have that money, I can't justify giving any money to PragerU. Fortunately, this is the internet. So there's plenty of stuff I could find that wasn't locked behind paywalls. First up are the Prep reading lists, a collection of Amazon wish lists full of books that conservative parents can buy and make their kids read. They have a list for every age group. The reading list for young children includes all of the PragerU children's books. Yes, those are a thing. More on that later. The middle school list includes the Tuttle Twins series, whose explicit purpose are to instill conservative ideas into kids, and the Rush Revere series, written by professional corpse Rush Limbaugh. Fun fact, I was given a couple of these books as a gift when I was like 11. They sucked. The list for teenagers is the best though. It has Orwell, with no sense of self-awareness, Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington, the favorite slave narrative of people who think pull yourself up by your bootstraps is a feasible solution for systemic racism. Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, no surprise there. And there's also Will Witt's book, Candace Owens' book, 2 of Dennis Prager's books, and 7, count them, 7 Ben Shapiro books. You know, it's almost like a lot of this conservative commentator stuff is just an easy way to make money. And my heart goes out to any kid whose parent is actually using these lists. Besides just reading lists, prep also includes study materials. Study materials for what, you ask? Why, for PragerU videos, of course. Let me introduce you to the 245-page prep study guide. Wait, 245 pages? Gah, you'd spend more than the $25 just printing that out. Well, anyways, the study guide covers several videos, including The Free Market Will Set You Free and Margaret Thatcher, the woman who saved Great Britain. We're going to take a look at the guide for who's more radical, the left or the right, because I've already done a video on that one, and I do not want to watch the Margaret Thatcher video. So at the top here, we have some key terms. Crazies is my personal favorite, very academic. Then there are some questions to be answered during and after the video. If the left got everything it wanted, how high could income taxes go? Oh, gee, probably 1,000,000,000%. On the next page, there are some discussion questions. The questions are all bad, but I don't think I've ever seen a question with as much a slant as, seeing as how raising the cost of electric bills so much would negatively impact low-income families so severely, do you think supporting the left and having them pass the Green New Deal would be worth it? Why or why not? Then, there's an opinion piece from Forbes about how single-payer healthcare is bad, with accompanying questions like, in what ways would single-payer healthcare take freedom away from Americans? And finally, there's a multiple-choice quiz and answer key. And if you aren't seriously concerned right now, you should be, because this format is alarmingly similar to a lot of actual assignments you get in American schools. I know I had countless assignments that looked like this, but with questions about like feudal Japan instead of the left destroying America. Can you guess why it looks so much like an actual worksheet? PragerU is making these study guides because they want homeschooling parents to use them. Amidst all the other culture war bullshit, the right has been making a big push against public schooling and for homeschooling. Conservative activists like Candace Owens decry public schools as mass-producing woke activist children. And when she says this, PragerU is right there to plug prep. The prep community is full of conservative parents who pulled their kids out of public school because of this manufactured outrage over woke ideology. And they're giving their kids these study guides because they want little Timmy to be conservative like them. But I don't think that the only people using these materials are those hoping to politically indoctrinate their kids. I can't say this for certain, but I suspect some people are probably using this just because homeschooling is really hard. Try as they might, pretty much no parent has the skill or time to be as good as an actual school with actual teachers. A lot of them just give their kids some worksheet they found online. And all PragerU content is designed to give an impression of professionalism. So it's hardly a stretch to imagine some parent might find this, not look too closely, and pass it on to their kid. And it isn't just homeschooling parents using PragerU materials to teach. Lest you forget that the E in PrEP stands for educators. There's been countless accounts of teachers showing PragerU materials in class. Conservatives complain endlessly about political agendas being pushed in American schools. Well, here's the agenda. Now, this happens for a couple reasons. It may seem like a government cover-up, but I've done some research, and it turns out that teachers are actually people, and people have their own political opinions. Teachers can absolutely let their political bias slip into the course materials. And if a conservative teacher finds a short, professional-looking video that confirms their pre-existing biases, they would need a lot of willpower to not slap it into the curriculum. Another part of the problem is just the struggle that public schools face. Underfunded districts often need to outsource their materials and use online sources. And lots of teachers just like to show YouTube videos in class. It lightens their load a little and can help to keep students engaged. I know that I saw my fair share of Crash Course, Bill Nye, and Oversimplified in school. But remember, PragerU content is no crash course. It's unsourced propaganda pushing a far-right political ideology. Have you ever wondered why not every PragerU video has an explicit political message? Sure, there's videos like Build the Wall and Money in Politics. What's the problem? But for every one of those, you have a Frederick Douglass, From Slave to Statesman, or a Who is Booker T. Washington, where there's definitely still an agenda, but it isn't explicit. They're the sort of video that you could theoretically show in a class without raising too much controversy. And then the kids go home, look up Prager University on YouTube, and down the rabbit hole they go. Like Prager Force, Prep also has an element of organizing to it. But while the extent of Prager Force organizing is promoting PragerU videos, Prep does something that only adults can manage: bitching to school officials. Yes, here is the Prep Parent Action Guide for Critical Race Theory. PragerU has created their own policy for how to address CRT in U.S. schools, and they've created a template letter that parents can fill out to annoy the school board, principal, or superintendent. You can read the whole thing if you want, but the part of the letter I want to highlight is, I'm concerned about it because summarize your opposition in a couple of sentences. Insert facts or statements from experts who also oppose. Now, this right here is the biggest failure with the template letter, because when you leave people to actually come up with their own reasons for hating critical race theory, you're not actually going to get that much. Hard to vocalize your opposition for a topic that you don't understand, you know? But assuming they come up with something, the parents will then send in this letter and include the PragerU solution to the problem that they made up. What's the solution? Creating a school unity board to control how teachers are allowed to talk about politics and divisive issues, which is of course code for anything that we don't like. I'll repeat that. The solution from the people who constantly whine about big government and 1984 is to create an extra layer of bureaucracy to police the curriculum. It's just pure parody at this point. But of course, the policy doesn't end at the committee. They also outline all the things that they want banned from being discussed in the classroom. Critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the 1619 Project. Okay, so it's about what you'd expect. But they also want to ban stuff like boycott, divest, sanction, shared identity affinity groups, which I assume means stuff like gay-straight alliances and African-American culture clubs, neither of which are exclusive, but I suppose it's divisive to acknowledge gay people or talk about Black history. Although my personal favorite policy has to be no member of the school's community will be asked or required to publicly or privately select and or confirm their gender identity, which I know they reject to on the basis that gender identity is a thing, but in practice, this just means kids won't be able to take surveys. Reading through all of this stuff, it's pretty clear that PragerU is using this anti-CRT hysteria to just try to get everything they personally don't like taken out of schools, while couching it all in the language of unity. They'll say, we are committed to teaching American history while acknowledging that slavery and racism are wrong and immoral. But you can't have an honest discussion of slavery and racism if you refuse to acknowledge that they're both ongoing problems in America. Honestly, with how much they want to micromanage the curriculum, it's no wonder they're so into homeschooling. The biggest problem with public education is that there is still a certain level of standards for actually having facts. So overall, what's the point of prep? Well, if PragerU as a whole is focused on turning kids into conservatives, then prep exists to facilitate that process. They want to infiltrate traditional education by getting teachers to put PragerU on the curriculum and getting parents to force anything that they dislike out of the curriculum. But this isn't enough. PragerU also wants to drive a wedge between parents and schools so that more and more parents will turn to homeschooling, where Prager University is the only thing on the agenda. This sort of thing is hardly new from the right. Most notably, the Daughters of the Confederacy were a group of racist women who pushed for pro-Confederacy books and narratives to be used in American schools. That's why the country's teaching on slavery is still so bad today. This is why something like prep is such a serious issue. We don't need to guess at what the consequences may be because we already know. When education is held from progress, society will be held back too. If they control the schools, pretty soon we'll be raising a generation of PragerU kids. Wait, PragerU kids? Why does that sound so familiar? You have got to be kidding me. Hi, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and notification bell for the next part. There's a train going on in the background if you can hear it. I have a Patreon if you want to give me money. That train is still going. Anyways, I swear if this isn't picking up on the mic, I'm just gonna seem like a freaking weirdo. But, yeah.